What up? What up? What up? It's your boy Dave B. You're watching Day Beyond TV, where we go beyond that everyday bullshit that people be consuming on a day-to-day basis. And we're here to break down that full moon in Pisces, full moon eclipse. Whole lot of real stuff going on. And if you're not careful, it's the type of transit that'll take you out. You know what I'm saying? It's the type, this the one. It's the type. You know what I'm saying? It's the type. And we're gonna break down exactly why it's the type. You know what I'm saying? So first things first, we're gonna look at just first of all, shout out all the Virgos and shout out to y'all. You know what I'm saying? It's Virgo season. We 15 degrees already in, so we're in the middle. We're dead in the middle. 15 degrees. This is kind of getting into that second deacon of Virgo, which is to be more into a little more restrictive, a little more realistic. Even though Virgo is it's a very sober sign already. What I mean by sober is like to be kind of on the side of your mind that's already concentrated on the details. You know, chances are that's what you've been super concerned on, especially with Mercury in Virgo. So even Mercury being in Virgo, I like to some astrologers don't consider Mercury exalted in Virgo. I do. With Mercury in Virgo, that's kind of like adding to the I think of because people will say, oh, well, Mercury is that's where it's home at. But I feel like, yeah, it's home, but it just happens to love the home that it was birthed in. So Mercury in Virgo, it loves to be there because it can spend all day breaking down each detail to the point where, it can potentially exhaust itself. So that's kind of an indicator for yourself of, okay, trying to, you have right now the energy in the sky has the ability to very much exhaust you just based upon Mercury being exalted where it loves to be home. And just Mercury in Virgo, a sign like Virgo is going to have you overthinking everything, specifically your actions. And you know it's okay to analyze your actions. It's okay to analyze the things that you are dealing with and trying to work through. But when you spend you got to monitor your time because you can spend so much time overthinking, you exhaust yourself, and then the burnout happens quicker than it's supposed to. We all get to a point where we need to rest, but Virgo always kind of, if you think Virgo having some properties of like Leo in the sense of exaggerating or going a little overboard, that's where Virgo can kind of like, I always look at a sign, but I look at other aspects that make up the sign's energies or their patterns, say so for Virgo, it's all about the details, but sometimes it can get exaggerated. Sometimes it can get a little dramatic, saying sometimes it can get a little bit like it's where it came from, which is the Leo energy. Right, but it'll still look like Virgo energy. So it'll look like an exaggeration on the details or getting a little too dramatic or paying too much attention. Um, it get down to the self-centeredness, a little bit. Because in a way, and this is not a great, this is not me attacking Virgos or anybody. Like y'all know it's just what happens a lot of times with all the signs have those things that they do that kind of show them kind of showing up on a low octave of things. So for Virgo, it could be a sense of I'm gonna put on the stress and take on the task of trying to help everybody else, but it's if it's done in an unhealthy way, a low octave way, it could be like a Virgo who basically tries to help you out, but then nobody asks for their help. But that's because for the Virgo, they at times they could use other people's problems to get away from their own, or so it's like it's really about them not just genuinely trying to help. So not only did they not ask for the help, but the help is not necessarily like they might mean well. Virgos mean well, but it sometimes it could be like if they haven't done the inner work for themselves, it can come off kind of like, damn, you really just you inserted yourself, and then now you making me feel bad because you exhausted, but I didn't even ask you for the help. And then the way you're trying to help is in in a way that doesn't feel good. So sometimes Virgos can overstep like that, and sometimes they can be too passive. They could agree to do all the work with no pushback for everybody else, and be kind of like forget themselves in the process. That's them leaning into the Libra aspect on the low octave. because Virgos are very generous, just like Leo, very giving, kind of like Libra. So they want to be helpful. They want to make themselves a part of things and be of service. But y'all already know where that could lead. You know what I'm saying? Being too of service, you get the shortest end of the stick and you exhaust it. You know what I'm saying? So you not only you got two problems on your hands, or multiple problems on your hands, just because not only did you exhaust yourself, you have no more energy to do what you need to do for you, and then now you're worried, you're stressed, you're worrying and stressing everybody around you. Now nobody want to kick it with you because you always come in with a problem and stuff like that. So, this is like in the most extreme negative end of Virgo energy, but this could play out to individuals right now who don't really understand what's going on in the sky and put themselves in compromising positions right now, because you might have it in your mind that, oh, the best thing to do for me right now is to try to help everybody. But like this year in particular is so important to help yourself. This is a very self um this should be a very self-fulfilling year, meaning your task is to fulfill yourself, and not in a pleasurable way, but to fulfill those gaps in your reality. And the gaps being, let's say you have a dream or aspiration to experience something. The gap is your reality compared to where you want, like where you are in reality versus where you want to be. And the only way to get there is to fulfill that space. That means you putting in the time, energy, effort, focus in order for that to, exist. you know this is a snake year, and it's a year 9. So everything in this year is following the energy of transformation, the ending and death of things, but also, well, the rebirth will happen as we go through the springtime. That'll actually be the rebirth. And then 2026, I think it's like a fire horse year, right? And what fire horse represents, you could really just look at the animals, it being involved, you know what I'm saying? So when it comes to this being the year of the snake, think of, even in the number 9, representing transformation, endings, death, if you will, right? But we mean death in terms of transformation. So going from one thing into another form. So even in the sense of, a snake gets to a point where it has to shed its skin. So a lot of this year is about shedding skin and being okay, but also paying attention to how others are moving. Like think of the experience of a snake slithering through the grass. It's very much you know there's the whole motion of kind of be like, that's kind of how you have to move with this year. So this year could be throwing a lot of different things at you, a lot of scenarios, a lot of stress, a lot of loss, but it's about how we're dancing with it. I would say navigating, but it's really like a dance. How much are you willing to, even to a point, sacrifice to get where you're trying to go, right? And sacrifice, you could do sacrifices on a positive end, a higher octave end, or a lower octave end. So there's sacrifices that we make for the sake of that could be forms of discipline. Like, I'm going to sacrifice eating a bunch of junk food, taking better care of my gut health. In return, I will reap the benefits of that change, of that sacrifice, which will be what you want at the end of it, right? But then there's also negative low octave sacrifices. So this is the person sacrificing um, parts of their authenticity for the sake of being accepted and liked and validated, right? But they think what they want is that validation, but soon when they experience that validation, they realize all the shortcomings that come with it, right? And that's kind of like, even in the sense of with social media and the way it is, you can get lost into thinking that, you know, a lot of the internet stuff is, you could get kind of caught up in wanting to do something that is a form of sacrificing you or who you are for the sake of trying to be seen a certain way, in that sense. So I just use the internet as an example, because a lot of people right now, everybody's on the high of trying to be a content creator, and then there's a lot of fear mongering around people, the unemployment, you know what I'm saying? And like, it's real. It's something to actually acknowledge and understand that, okay, yeah, economically, we're going through a complete overhaul. Like there's a complete remix, complete crumbling of old systems. So it is a matter of, I'm not saying be uninformed. Go ahead, get your information. I even made a video talking about how, when with how to actually how to generate wealth while you actually at a job, and it's forms of learning the industry. You should know how money moves if you care about um actually having a healthy money flow. You should consider learning a little bit about money. You don't have to become a scholar in it. You don't have to sell a course about it, but it's a matter of just being aware. Like, you know, very practical means. Like a lot of the times, like I get it. The astrology, the tarot, all the spiritual content you might intake. Yeah, it makes you feel good. But I'm gonna tell you like this: the real life, you have to step your foot into it in order to really um make anything, make any use out of this spiritual stuff. The point of spirituality is to enhance the human experience, right? Give you something to believe in, give you, and hopefully that something is yourself, right? Give you a little bit more foresight over your life, a little bit more integration into like understanding what is on your subconscious mind and what you consciously are experiencing so that you can make better decisions. You know what I'm saying? Knowing how to manage kind of your emotional state, let things go, deal with things like grief, but also learn how to express other parts of yourself that you may want to also tap into. There's many different, you know, benefits to spirituality, but I think that what's happened, especially now, is that everything cooked up in the spiritual space as far as like content or whatever it is. It's like, and this is not just in the spiritual community, this is in most communities, because it's a I'm explaining it playing out in one aspect, but it's kind of like the same thing is probably happening in other communities, maybe in slightly different ways, but it's kind of like just it lends itself to the idea that it's so important for people to become individuals right now. There's a point I noticed like a lot in the beginning of a lot of this stuff. I argue that was like from 2012 up until now, right? In that window, really 2012 up until 2020. And then now what we're experiencing is the transition. So this is why the last 5 years been extremely weird. Like it's just like it feels almost like out of time. And every time we think we're about to get into some normal shit, like start of 2025 probably felt normal, but then it kind of tripled down on no, whole new world, whole new things to be aware of, whole new ways that you got to figure out and maneuver. And the whole thing is in that window from 2015 to about, I mean, 2012 to about 2020, maybe 2021 or 22. That window, there was a lot of, again, internet communities that played out very much like Age of Pisces energies, where Age of Pisces was kind of like this more gullible time, not to talk shit about it because during, but just to be real, it's a gullible type vibe in the sense of and the thing about it is, gullible might be a harsh term to use, but it's just like it was a time everybody was just going along with stuff. We believed it because it was passed down. We didn't, or we believed it because it didn't, it just felt good. So this gets, saying y'all can kind of, hopefully you can understand where I'm going with that. Like in Pisces energy, it's much more about the vibe than it is the facts. And that's what's making things extremely uncomfortable in these new times because in Pisces, it's more about the connection than it is about the individual. Damn near, I, argue that the ego is undergoing a kind of it's like a refresh almost. So during Pisces, when the sun is passing through Pisces, it's almost like a dissolving of it's like if you think of Pisces 12th house energies, like we are one, one is all, like Pisces representing the ocean, which connects, everything in a sense, the collective. energy, right? So it's the dissolving of the self to become the collective. But then in Aries, it materializes as the self again. It wants to be an individual again. But I'm using that to explain age of Pisces into now the age of Aquarius. So you had people kind of flocking together in communities based in connecting without doing, as much work as we do now for the facts to identify where those hard lines are that make me me and you. But what you have is a lot of people who aren't quite um late to the shift. And it's not even so much late to the shift. I think that literally there sometimes life has to put you just through experiences that lead you to to your own personal conclusion on how to go about the current times. That's kind of how it works. That's why we can all look at what's going on in astrology and maybe even have similar situations happen or similar things that we can relate to, but at the end of the day it's going to hit everybody in its own way. And some people are quicker to peep the shift, right? Knowing where the planet's at helps you kind of find it faster, I'd say. But, even a person who's never once asked about an astrology reading still will feel these energies, just that it'll impact them in different ways, in whatever way that your individual experience allows for it to play out. But everyone is being affected, just in your own unique way. So, this age of Aquarius though, it's getting a lot more strict on, you know, have you been an individual or no? Are you still teetering that line because you don't trust yourself or you don't believe yourself or you don't respect yourself? Hopefully it's none of that. Hopefully it's just a matter of you not, figure hopefully you are just looking for the right way to do it. And even looking for the right way, you got to be careful because, and when I say the right way to do it, I mean representing yourself as an individual. Like it's not something you should have to do. It should be something you're embodying. And sometimes the reason you could say, yeah, just be yourself. And it sounds like easy advice. But the thing is, we live in a world that has so many layers or pushes people into so many different, it's almost like if you would think, sometimes to fit in society, you have to contort your true self to fit the mold to be accepted. Because let's be real, social acceptance is very much there's a reason there's anxiety around it because in some senses, it's a means to survive. You know what I'm saying? If you're not being socially acceptable, it almost feels like I can't survive or thrive to for that matter in this environment. You know what I'm saying? I can't thrive in my everyday life. I can't thrive at my job if I'm too much like a individual, which starts to feel like I'm being weird. And of course, we know the truth, which is no, how we gotta move in the world. We know it's supposed to be like, man, fuck all those weak thoughts about what other people think of me. I gotta show up as myself regardless. But even in that, there's techniques and ways to do that. You know what I'm saying? Depending on who you are, because some people rather just go ahead and do it and bump heads if they do. Some people rather add a little bit more finesse or might find a balanced way to do it that's a little bit more palpable. But regardless, we all go through that kind of back and forth. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. I want to pull it back, but that's important things to understand about the age of Aquarius, where you have to put yourself in more of a mindset that doesn't care, like more on the ladder of what I was it the ladder? Just the more on the sense of doing what you got to do without so many feelings involved. It was a lot more, it's doing things without so many feelings and emotions involved, doing things that's more about logic, reason, um, even forms of organization coming together more so on a logical foundation or like trying to logically reason something out. The reasons that people are doing things are less emotional, you know. Not, it's people still gonna be in their feelings. It doesn't get rid of emotions, but just in the age of Aquarius, you have to be a lot more, you know, logical about what you're trying to associate yourself with. You can't just go with the flow of, oh, enough of these people have believed this in my family. No, you need to actually logically think about how has that belief system benefited or destroyed your family in certain ways? How has it uh, helped or hurt your family for generations? How does it help or hurt you? And what are the logistics behind it as far as your participation in it or lack thereof? So it's different factors like that that have to be put into play. I say have to be put into play. It's really not have to. Maybe I should say should be considered. And this is kind of why newer generations are looking at just kind of innovative ways to go about the things that we feel as though the ones before us may not have gotten right, or continuing to build on the things that we want to continue as a tradition and things of that nature. But anyway, let's get into some more of these energies. So Venus is in Leo. So right now, everybody's love language is themselves, is themselves. This could make for a very, the thing about it is with the Sun and Mercury in Virgo, there's a lot of stress to be had, a lot of worrying. Um, Depending on what side you are, I feel like this eclipse kind of hit in a way where, when you think of Pisces energy, right? A full moon in Pisces is already going to bring this gigantic feeling surrounding your dreams, imagination, right? Creativity, but also illusions. So, with the illusions aspect of things, illusions, and this is a water sign and it's the moon. But being that it's an eclipse during a lunar eclipse, what happens is the moon is blocked out, which is almost like your emotions being clipped out of the situation. So this almost feels like a disconnect from maybe how you used to feel, right? Because it's almost like, you might feel a little bit disconnected from, how you used to feel or how things used to be, how you used to feel about even when it comes to yourself. Like I was kind of saying before, Pisces can get you in that dissolving space where what you thought was the ego that you wanted to hold on to no longer makes sense in the context of whatever you are experiencing. It no longer is functional or acceptable in the space you're trying to utilize your ego. That's kind of what Pisces does. It kind of dissolves that. So we're still dealing with the moon, but the thing about it is the moon, you might feel detached from, just anything. So depending on what house you have Pisces in, that could play out as well. Because like if you got Pisces in the fourth house, you could you feel disconnected from a comfort zone. Or if you got Pisces in the second house, you could be disconnected from how you feel about the things that you valued about yourself or about certain something else, something outside of you. I like to look inside first, but it could be something that you once valued that you no longer can feel that connection to, whether that's a person, place, or a thing. In the 11th house, your emotional connection to friends and things that you were associated with, groups, no longer want to be associated with that, or something plays out that makes you feel the separation from that. Seventh house, Pisces in the seventh, you might feel disconnected from the way you relate, whether that's you relating or who's relating to you, right? And that emotional disconnection could leave you feeling dissolved or like not really understanding what's an illusion and what's actually formulating itself to be something that, what you imagined it to be, because sometimes even with Pisces energy, sometimes we can imagine something and in that imagination we create an expectation. And when that dream plays out and we don't experience that thing that we imagined or feel it in the way that we once imagined it, we can become, scared of it. We can become, um, we can become angry at it. We can develop all kinds of negative feelings towards that thing. So, um, try not to get wrapped. Well, this is the type of energy that will help. It's actually kind of beneficial because what it does is it snaps you out of the the imagining portion, right? Which forces you to really look at your expectations and see where, you know, you were a bit delusional about what you were expecting. But at the time, it was a beautiful imagination. You're not wrong for dreaming, but you gotta put things in context sometimes, and sometimes it's okay because on the other end of this, right, kind of what we should be considering is opposite to that Virgo, when you see the reality, right, or you when you're separated from that imagination to kind of sober up and see what you were expecting versus what actually is going on. This is where we get into kind of the kind of I don't want to say secret, but yeah, I guess in a way, the secret to kind of navigate this energy is in the Virgo aspect of, okay, well, now that we've disillusioned ourselves, what is left for us to work with? And that right there is the key right there for you. What is there left to work with? Okay, let's get to it. And that's kind of show so the way we got to approach a lot of the things from the eclipse, right? You really the eclipse is not going it didn't feel good. Where you at right now, you might not feel good. But the thing about it is even feelings, you are not your feelings. So you might not feel good about it yet, but there's different routes that we can go about that. One, you could say, okay, well, I might feel this way about it, but let's put those things to the side and let's work with what we got going on in reality right in front of me. Or you could take the other route, which is if you're a more emotional person and those emotions are very important for you in order for you to move and think clearly. Because some people are like that. Some people who are more water and fire, they need to feel right first. Regardless, you could tell them all day and night that they are not their feelings. And we understand that, but they are connected to those things more closely than somebody who might be earth and air based, who actually doesn't matter what they feel, they can still get a task done. It's more about how they're thinking about it. Different strokes for different folks. So when we talking about individuals who are, in that second space, it's about, you know, putting a active, making it a conscious decision to change how you feel about something that, or not just something, but what you're faced with in reality. So that's still that could be a mental thing, right? And I know psychology is like, don't, always feel your, don't forget to feel your feelings. And that's very important. But feeling your feelings doesn't mean to sit in them and dissolve and to, soak it up and become useless in the world. Feeling your feelings is just to be accepting of what you really feel. And once you, or not even accepting, but to be aware of what you're feeling so that you can now know how to, because once you know, like, it's kind of dicey because like it almost sounds like I'm saying to intellectualize your feelings, and that's not necessarily what I'm saying, because you want to feel it first. But after you're done feeling it, the next thing that naturally is going to come is you understanding, or you having a conscious idea of what that feeling is, which you can now label and in a sense intellectualize. Now you know what to do with that feeling though. You could choose to use that feeling to fuel you to keep on going, or to pivot and figure out how you got to go about it a different way. But, nonetheless, you still got that there right there for you to access, right? So yeah, that's the key right now though. And that's usually how it is for, full moons and even new moons. Full moons, you need to look at the opposite for how to deal with the impact, the emotional intensity, because full moons are always bringing that intensity. It's the fullest magnitude of all the feelings you've been putting into this cycle, the fullest climax. So you want to balance that out by being satisfied in the energy that it's in. So think about it like that as well. You should be satisfied with all the illusions in your life to the point where you don't feel the need to add more. So you don't need to triple down on your dreams and imaginations right now. You actually need to do the opposite, right? You can still have dreams and aspirations, but you got to get your ass to work. It's time to sober up and look at what's right in front of you and how we need to move and navigate and organize things. What can we put on a routine to continue to do to get me where I want to go? You get what I'm saying? And that get me where I want to go could look like a business endeavor. It could look like a relationship as well, because there might be things you need to work on in order to actually make that work. right? And it might not have nothing to do with anything tangible. It could be the emotional work. It might be the way you're thinking about your relationship or your situation. It's not conducive to a healthy one, no matter what you're doing physically. So you might have to go internal and say, oh man, I got to work on giving my partner, giving my relationship more good thoughts or more good feelings. And you could take that as extreme as you want to go, as specific or as broad as you want to keep it. It's just mental things too, not just a relationship. It could be how you're thinking and feeling about um your current, space. You want to get somewhere else. You want to climb, say in this example, you want to get a promotion or something like that, but you keep looking at, or when you interacting at your job, you still coming at it from a certain thought form and a feeling that doesn't reflect that of a person who is eligible for a promotion. So you got to get a little bit more creative and involved in your transformation. I kind of that to me is what Virgo season feels like, getting more involved in your transformation. So there's things you want to change, and you probably been changing. If you want a higher octave of things, you've been putting in change, and throughout every kind of storm and phase, you take a little hit there, you take a little hit there, but you still keep pushing on. Well, go ahead. Shout out to y'all. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to y'all. Give yourself a high five, give yourself a hug. But there's still a long ways to go. That we only there's still a long ways to go. We only in the sixth house. So we haven't even gone through the fall yet. And that is also what you might be feeling as anxiety or some form of like kind of a nagging pressure. You want to get a lot done. And see, it doesn't help that Mars is in Libra still, because Mars and Libra is making it even more difficult to kind of fuel your fire, to connect with your ambitions the same way that you was, or to feel as though you're as passionate as you used to be. Right now, you actually have to figure out how you can tag team. Right now is almost like a light testing ground for potential communities that could be built, right? And when I say community, I just mean you aligning yourself with two or more individuals who share a similar sentiment or idea of an outcome, right? Sentiment as in we all want to change the world. We might have our individual ways, but we have the sentiment of wanting to make a positive impact in the world. That's a sentiment, right? Um, agreeing upon, or all aligned in the outcome of a idea is, we have an idea of what we want to do and build, so we're coming together to make that work. So that'd be like a business or a company, who come together every day, many different walks of life, but that business is an idea, and that idea needs those individuals to function within it to achieve a common goal, which is to become, to make sales in that business, or to turn a profit for that business, et cetera, et cetera. So Mars and Libra kind of, and it's also a mirror too. Anything that's pissing you off right now, understand the other side of it as if it were to mirror you. Understand where you participate in that very same thing. Libra is a very, it's all about that mirror funhouse almost, right before we get into Scorpio, where things get a little deep. So, Mars is about to turn up when it gets into Scorpio, but for right now, we need to see ourselves. So, in your relationships as well, the frustrations that your partner might be bringing up in you are probably things that either directly correlate to what you be doing, or things that are triggering you for you to look deeper in yourself and see kind of where you're fueling the fire, or where you need to stomp on a trigger. Because you just because you get triggered does not give you the right to cause harm, or to retaliate, or to react. So sometimes you have to know that, okay, even though I'm triggered, I need to get better at catching myself in that. And once you catch yourself in that, you can trace things back to where the root is and do some real healing. So that's kind of where that plays out, right? And that energy is opposite to Chiron. Chiron is still, it's 26 degrees. So Chiron is still in Aries, doing what it needs to do. So this is like opposite that. So you could do a lot of positive healing I say positive healing as if healing is not positive already, but you can do a lot of healing, is my point, by understanding that dynamic. Now, we also have Saturn back 29 degrees in Pisces. So this is causing a lot of disruption as well. You know, when it comes to the disillusionment, we also feel that, and that might be where the pressure is coming from as well, is the impeding kind of, just Saturn retrograde, bringing back old things that were restrictions before. And the question now is, have you developed a strong enough sense of self to break through those things, right? And it could be sense of self, but you really got to look at what house this is coming at you in to get very specific. But think about where that is. It's in between. It's on the cusp of Pisces and Aries. So it is about identity. It is about uh, intent, and it's about willpower. But it's way more about, think about everything that we was kind of getting into with Saturn and Aries. You know, to be a leader, you might look at like people, especially Aries, right? Aries doesn't look at it like, I've always dreamed of being the leader so I could be important. Like that's how a Leo might think. Like, I want to be the leader. Like at a young age, I want to be a leader, not knowing what comes with being a leader. It's just I want to be a leader because I see other people get attention for being a leader, right? Aries will look at that same position and say, I'm a leader, not because I wanted to be, but because that's what I became by being so into myself. Because when you are into yourself and you become your own spark and you go out and do something because you wanted to do it, even that in itself is a lot more genuine, right? And you become an example. And there's going to naturally be people who gravitate to that and want to be a part of that. And being that you're the first one who created something in that space, people are going to automatically follow right behind you. That's how Aries become leaders. And then before they know it, they like, damn, all this damn responsibility. I don't even want this shit. I never asked for this shit. And then they go spark that off somewhere else. They separate from that completely. And the next thing you know, they pop up and become a leader or in a whole nother sense. And they kind of repeat that. But I say all that to say right here with Saturn kind of doing that dance now back in Pisces, back to belief, what I'm saying? I've been one of the biggest things I was saying is like, are your beliefs your own? And so this is kind of showing you another form of, look at all these restrictions that you either now have the key or the ability to scale and climb over, or look at all the restrictions that are still around you due to things that you just got to work on, things that you got to continue to work through. Look, you're not ready yet. And this is why, so this is a very truth telling eclipse. It's not the end all be all, because the thing about it is, even if you're not ready now, it doesn't mean you won't be ready soon. It doesn't mean, that you will be ready soon. It's a mentality thing, and it's really more so about how fast you can adapt and move according to new awareness and new information and making the right moves. It's really on divine time at that point. you know um Neptune is retrograde right now, so right now in these outer planets, all the outer planets on 1 degree, and that should let you know kind of like why it seems almost like, why things feel the way they do, why there's so much intensity and we feel a change both in our personal life but also in the world. We feel this massive change, but it feels like we just haven't fully stepped into it yet. It's almost like we got deer legs, doe legs, what I'm saying, where it's not enough. We haven't had enough experience and we haven't gained enough muscle to get our balance right. And so you have to give yourself a little bit of grace at this time. We got Pluto 1 degrees Aquarius. We have in its retrograde, we got Uranus 1 degrees Gemini in this retrograde, about to go back into Taurus. So even in that, Uranus and Taurus being a huge thing when it comes to, you need to be the source of value almost. You need to value yourself. You are the greatest resource. So you need to tap into what your gifts are. That's kind of what Uranus and Taurus needed you to do. That's why now everybody wants to be a content creator. and people are kind of damn like mad at themselves that they didn't because it's the hot thing to do right now. And the reason it's hot is because it's a form of a person building a personal brand, aka it looks to the surface as they're getting paid to just be themselves, which is the everybody wants to do that right now, to get paid to be yourself. That's the dream for everybody, you know. But that is what Uranus and Taurus kind of was hinting at, you know. Now Uranus and Gemini is a little different because it's about the language, it's about the communication, it's about aligning yourself, you know. That's what's going to start to become more important even in the business space, especially now with when you see talks about how okay, it's a lot more unemployed people than vacant positions. So they're painting the picture as if the economy is collapsing, right? Now you could take that to heart and be stressed about it, or you could just understand the dynamics of it. Like, you know, all you really need to, it's like at that point, you know, you need to become either you need to innovate a way to generate that. Like, I don't want to get too into that. That's going to take me into a whole nother tangent. That's I'll say that for another video because that kind of goes into what I was saying about generating wealth at your job. Because it's like in today's time, right? There's money out here to be made, you know, but you have to really kind of put your best mind forward to it to figure out how you're going to do it. The traditional way, the problem with the traditional way is that it really used to be like, oh, I could just like I do believe that you can get a job fairly quickly, but it won't be a job that's paying you a lot and it won't be a job that you probably enjoy being at. Although, like I broke down in previous videos, purpose of a job is not necessarily to be fulfilling. It's to, not to say it shouldn't be, you know what I'm saying? But the reality of it is that it was not never meant to be. It wasn't made to be. So to expect it to be something that it's not, you setting yourself up for disappointment and frustration, right? So that being said, you got to really think you're going to have to strategize and get very innovative on how you get stability. You know, like part of me doesn't like I feel weird saying that, but I think that's accurate. Like you have to strategize how you're gonna not only make money, but keep money, save money, stack money, and use money. Like you have to really think a little bit about it, like strategize. It's not the same. Like I don't know how it was because I wasn't an adult, you know. I mean, in the, you know what I'm saying? Like if I think back, you know, because I'm only 30, you know what I'm saying? I'm just thinking, I'm like, I think back at some point, right? I think the economy was in a place where you didn't have to think so damn hard about how to use your money to make it stretch. You know, now it's just like, and I think I'm accurate in saying that because I think the cost of living at this point is compared to like, you know, what people are able to even make, or most people, you know, I think that the difference is crazy. But, you know, not everybody's going through that kind of issue though. Some people got good, better jobs and stuff like that, and they're in a better position. But even then, you know, it's a form of just Uranus being in Taurus is you got to think a little differently about how you're going about, you know, using money, saving money, um, you know, investing money and things like that. Like we haven't even really gotten deep into the crypto um side of things, you know, the crypto and Bitcoin and how that's about to affect things. You know, we just hear glimpses and stuff like that. And right now they're doing a lot of, you know, right now we're not seeing a lot of the results of the changes that they're making. Um, so that lets you, you know, I don't know. I'm not even gonna speculate too much about that because it's coming, you know, especially with the AI stuff, it's coming. But how soon? Who, you know, we don't really, at least I don't know. You know, I don't know how soon it's really coming. But Uranus, and matter of fact, that makes me think like, because a lot of times when I see retrograde, especially with these outer planets, knowing that it's going to be a very long time before we see that energy again, it kind of makes me feel like this time period, especially like this little pocket of energy, is about reassessment, right? So reassessing how you even thought that certain things was going to play out. Because like retrogrades kind of, they take you back. So there was an energy you was in during this. It's almost like, think about it. You back from the future. You already passed this degree before. So if you could really think back to what was going through your head at 29 degrees, um, 29 degrees Taurus for Uranus, right? When Uranus was in 29 degrees in Taurus, what was kind of going through your head? Maybe even a couple degrees back for, whatever in that vicinity of space, right? However long that was. How did you think things was going to play out? How did you expect, especially when it comes to, in Uranus's case, it's dealing with Venus, it's dealing with value. So how did you think your, like, whether that's you gaining value or you feeling that self-esteem within yourself and what you have to offer to the world, what was kind of going through your mind? Consider what house it was in, because that could let you know also what were some of these themes, because these themes are coming back. And Uranus has a way of kind of like kind of hitting you with something you didn't expect out of nowhere to show you. But see, the thing about it, Uranus is funny too, because Uranus is kind of like, it's like slapping you in the face, but you can't get mad at it. You kind of got to look at it and take it like a real one. Like you got to take it like low key. The slap that Uranus might get you with, you might have to charge it to the game, depending on where you at though. Not everybody might be in the space to understand why they got to charge it to the game. And what I mean by that is like some things when you put yourself in certain positions, you gotta be prepared for what comes with that, positive or negative. Like people like to look at the positive of things. Or if I get myself in a certain status, it's gonna be like this. Oh yeah. But you also have to consider the negative and assess for yourself before you get in that position whether or not that is okay with you. You know what I'm saying? And once there's a Jay-Z interview that keeps popping up lately. And it's like him speaking on that part where it's like he like when you looking at, if someone came up to you and told you you can have everything you want, you can feed your family, you can give back to the community, you can do this, that, and the third, send this person to school, do that, all these great things, right? You will get that one day. But what's gonna come with that is criticism, ridicule, and X, Y, and Z. You know what I'm saying? The people turning on you, the people saying you did this, saying you did that, the people talking. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you got that it comes with the gig, it comes with it. So, you know, as long as you moving with integrity, it's really nothing, at that point, hey, it's like back to even understand the context of like this internet shit. Real life is going on. So you got to know where to really put your real time, real effort, real focus. Let's keep the internet, meaning let's make sure we don't lose our, because that's what's happening right now. People almost getting lost into the internet to the point where it's overtaking their personalities. And so what you have is an individual who's on very shaky ground because the internet will change on you. You ever seen somebody get uh tore down on like Twitter on a quote tweet or something like that? I mean, it's like vultures almost. You know what I'm saying? Vultures will come out, pick it to the bone, pick you to the bone, and let the internet tell it that person is no longer relevant, that person is no longer a factor. We killed you. But that person still has a real life. You know what I'm saying? And and depending on how intertwined, of course, that's going to determine the intensity of it. But again, it goes back to what I was saying about take care of your real life and make sure you're moving with a certain character you know, you're moving with a certain level of integrity, you know what I'm saying, in real life, so that the lines don't get crossed to a point, or even if they get crossed, again, taking care of your real life is always gonna support anything you do on the internet. People think it's vice versa. They think, oh, I gotta be someone on the internet for my real life to matter, and you already got the game fucked up, you know, because again, the internet at the drop of a dime, you know what I'm saying, you could end up assed out because these are a bunch of people who don't know you but are formulating opinions, right? So when things are going right, it's almost addictive. People get addicted to likes. Like, we talk about social media addiction probably in the past, but like that's so much of a real thing that you really have to consider. Like, it be people who are full on addicted to the attention they get from posting a video and getting a like, even if it's one. You know what I'm saying, a comment, or to stirring up controversy down to being a troll. You know what I'm saying? All these different things. People are literally addicted to that. So, you just have to you have to decide who you are in this game. You know what I'm saying? Like me, I'm not talking to I'm talking to a specific type of individual. I feel like, it might be broad in reach, but you know, that's what it's come down to. You know, I'm speaking to the individual who's on their path, who's trying, who's every day waking up, making an effort to get to a better position. You know what I'm saying? Whatever that position is. But yeah, real life is always going to support that, and make it much easier to deal with whatever comes with the gig. You know what I'm saying? If you want to, depending on what you choose, not everybody choose to be online or to be on the internet, and that's fine. You won't have to experience all the shit people who are on the internet are. But the thing about it is today they make it seem like you got to do everything through the internet. And they're kind of trying, like, it's interesting because they making it seem like that's really the only way to live, to the point where everybody talks about getting a phone that don't got all the iPhone features and stuff, but everybody talk about doing it, but not enough people are doing it for me to believe that that's what the common person is inclined to do. No, the common person is inclined to continue to immerse themselves into this imaginary internet land. And it's only going to get more intense as more technology comes out. And also, like I was just explaining before, what if the government going to do anything is create a problem and create the solution, and then the solution comes with more problems for them to create more solutions as an offspring. So the one problem that they're creating is this economy crash where it's too many unemployed people and not enough open positions, and there's the idea of the threat of technology taking people's jobs. So the solution is about to be some shit to keep you on the internet tenfold. You know what I'm saying? I guarantee. That's what I can say. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. So getting back to the energy, Jupiter and Cancer, that's been going on. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to expansion, everything we're experiencing is extremely emotional. Extremely emotional. So you gotta take care of yourself right now, you know. And it might be, taking care of yourself. This is a sextile with the sun in Virgo, and it's a trine with the moon in Pisces. So right now it's like, you know, chances are regardless of what you might be going through that's causing you emotional upheaval, um, one thing you can do to kind of get yourself right is to I want to say jump into spiritual practices that allow for you to connect more with your root system, like connect more with your emotional state to cultivate kind of a sense of comfort and a sense of nurture within yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, we really have to take care of ourselves right now. So, it's a sextile to the sun. So there's an opportunity for you to have a lot of, either experiences that relate to things you got to take care of physically that will make you emotionally more okay and secure. So that might be like things you got to do as responsibilities that might not always be fun, but you know, with the wisdom you hold, that that's necessary to get taken care of so that you can breathe easy at night. And then when it comes to Pisces, dreams and imaginations and things like that, knowing what to care for and what not. You should have the wisdom, right? To even if I'm going, if you realize something is an illusion and it kind of dissipates right before your eyes, you still can learn from that, right? You have the gift to be a lot more responsive and open to new teachings and new wisdom, you know. But the emotion, the only thing about the Cancer and the Pisces energy is that it can butt heads when it comes to so the moon in Pisces is give well, actually this is beneficial because he with Jupiter is not only it loves to be in Cancer. It's exalted there. So in Cancer, it's like it there's that principle of making the when you're it's just that principle of being a catalyst or an initiator in the comfort zone, in the learning process to make you comfortable, right? It's the openness to be uncomfortable, to learn to become comfortable. And that right now is kind of like, I would say that's kind of part of our superpower right now, if you could tap into that space. So when you're going through all these new things, you're approaching it like, I'm the one that's about to make me comfortable. I don't need it to come comfortable. I'm gonna make it comfortable because it's cardinal. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we should be considering. All right, let's hit some of these moon aspects. So moon in conjunct Venus, misunderstanding how to connect to what you love and appreciate and value, or feeling disconnected from what you used to love and appreciate and value you. So again, this adds to the what we were kind of discussing about, disillusionment and kind of seeing the reality of things and how you kind of seeing where how you used to feel about it might have been blinding you to just what's really going on. You might look deeper into it and realize, damn, that thing that I thought was actually giving me a lot of support and attention actually wasn't. I just thought that because of how highly I thought of that thing, that person, place, or thing, or some form or variation of that. So, you know, it might be a tough time to connect to what you value or forms of relating or relationships in general, depending on what kind of relationships you've been establishing, because on a higher octave of things, this could be things to get you. So this is disillusionment but for the sake of getting you closer to what you actually deserve. You know what I'm saying? So your approach to going about something was the wrong, you had the wrong perspective, and now you kind of know what to value more based upon what's presenting itself or shining through in this time, as far as like what's catching your attention. Or you could feel a strong, misunderstandings can lead to a stronger connection to things, because you could misunderstand that at first, but then it leads to you correcting yourself, and now you're on a better path to, be in alignment. Um, Moon in conjunct Mars. So misunderstanding how to connect to your passions, right? So the things that you used to be motivated for, here comes the disillusionment, and you might not have that same passion. And the thing about it is, it might not be that all is lost. You might just have to pivot or look for another means of attacking your goals or your passions or the things that motivate you, or this could be the disillusionment that could lead to anger, or feeling disconnected from anger that prevents you from setting proper boundaries and things like that. So you might get frustrated at yourself about that, and you want to make sure you still able to speak up, speak your mind. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be super aggressive in things like that, but confrontation could be healthy if, because a lot of times confrontation is a form of giving others the opportunity to learn about where we stand on things. You know, People look at Mars as if it's a bad thing, but a lot of times Mars is so necessary for letting others know where you stand. And when others know where you stand, like the people who are supposed to be in your life will respect that. That's what Mars role really is a lot of times, is to kind of formulate the first sense of self in a space, you know what I'm saying? To assert yourself, to be assertive, not necessarily to be domineering or to be aggressive towards others, but it's just a matter of saying, hey, I stand here, I exist, this is my space, or the where my force field begins and things like that. Because we all have that force field. But when people invade your space, when people disrespect your boundaries, this is where certain people get passive aggressive, which can be destructive, or people get outwardly aggressive and fights break out and things like that. Um, let's see, the moon is also, we already know moon opposite Mercury. So our minds and our hearts are in two different places. So this could make for a little bit of a, again, you might feel disconnected, or like the people around you who once felt close might feel a little disconnected at the time. Don't panic. It's just a part of the phase that we going through. So allow it to play out, but don't be naive. Like, honestly, like I said before, the disillusionment of where this Pisces energy is coming from is to help you kind of make more sense out of what belongs in your life and what doesn't. So it's all for the greater good in a sense, even though it might feel rough, and a lot of this is on the North Node. Saying 18 degrees is where the North Node is at. So a lot of that North Node energy as well is playing into this moon energy of it's all for the sake of putting you on that path for alignment. But as a result, a lot of things might fall off along the way. You know what I'm saying? You might lose a couple things along the way, but you have to understand that if it's falling off and you losing it, then it's meant to be lost. You can't. You got to kind of look at what you got and move forward. Crying about it ain't gonna help. Um, let's see, the moon also is like kind of doing like a square with Uranus, because Uranus is still in Gemini. So, it's a little bit of a learning process. Really, being that Uranus is going retrograde, it's really like a reassessment of your sense of value, um, your individual sense of value. So, understanding yourself and being like, okay, this is what I used to value, and this is how much that's relevant now, or kind of where you was at mentally back at 29 degrees when Uranus was 29 degrees in Taurus. Like, what was some of the things that you were looking to change that you knew you had to change that either are still presenting itself as a problem now because you didn't change enough, or you need to kind of take it to the next step. Like, we have to continue with the change in order for it to mean something. So right now we're kind of reassessing. Uranus can bring a lot of havoc. I think I mentioned this earlier. It can bring a lot of havoc and shake things up. So when it does, as it comes and it's shaking things up in a retrograde sense, maybe bringing something from the past back up for you to address. The power of the retrograde is always in the response in the present. So address it with your new perspective, your new character. Don't address it in the fear state of a previous mind state. You get what I'm saying? Because it might not, again, the strength is in the present of what you transformed and learned to get to where you at now. The strength is, people lose their strength when they try to backtrack and they double back. They go to an old previous mentality or allow something to overtake them, because sometimes that'll happen. A past scenario will pop right back up in your face, and you'll get so nervous and scared you'll run away from it when the answer was really in grounding yourself and addressing it in the present. And you realize, oh shit, this not that bad. This is not too bad. Actually, I'm better at this than I thought. You know what I'm saying? And that's when you actually can say, oh, I learned that lesson. And some people, you didn't quite learn the lesson, but now it's propped back in your face to do something new this time. So, it all kind of depends on where you at. Um, yeah. And then last but not least, um, Moon is making like a slight sextile with Pluto, but just lends itself to the importance of the transformation. Pluto's in Aquarius, but it's on that cusp and stuff. But it lends itself to understand that, hey, yo, things are changing, things are transforming, get with it. This is not the time to cry about it. Like, crying about it ain't gonna do nothing for you. Just have peace of mind knowing that this is what's supposed to be happening. You get what I'm saying? Like, even with what was it? Even with like I was saying before about it being a year 9, year of the snake. allow that skin to shed. And we're going into the fall. So even more things are going to expose themselves to fall off. You know what I'm saying? So brace, I don't even want to say brace yourself because it's a matter of you want to be at ease so that you can allow for fluid movement. You know what I'm saying? When you brace yourself, you get too clenched up. You anticipating too much of a impact. Sometimes you have to be fluid so that the impact don't break nothing. So that you can continue to be resilient and continue moving. Life gonna go on. Like I said, it comes with the gig. So part of life, it's gonna come with some struggle. It's gonna come with a lot of discomfort. But you have all the tools you need to get from point A to point B. You just gotta trust that. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't trust that, it's probably because you haven't done enough. You haven't gone through enough experiences. You haven't seen enough. So go out there and see some shit, and then you'll be surprised how far you actually go in life when you just apply that to, you just get up and make an effort. That's it. That's all you got to do is get up and make an effort because that's what we were gifted every time we wake up with a good inhale and we open our eyes and we exhale. All of that is just another opportunity to get up, get after it, and do something that could be potentially impactful in a positive way. I appreciate y'all for listening. Hopefully, this was helpful. Make sure you drop a like, drop a comment if you got something to say. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep the conversation going. Keep on building. I appreciate each and every one of y'all sticking around. Hit that sub button if you found my channel. It's the first time you're on my channel and you like what you heard. Much love. I'll catch you on the next one. Yeah. Hope y'all had a beautiful full moon and be safe out there.